The idea is to understand communism and fascism not just as historical forces or political theories, but as psychology, as pieces of personal psychology, because any political system has to have supporters. So there's this idea that communism is an envy spiral where people envy others who are doing better than them and wish to use the state to pull them down. And then because this process empowers them, they continue finding people to pull down, and they continue finding people to weaponize the state against. And then fascism is a disgust spiral. This idea that that which is harmful to the individual and harmful to society, we have a disgust instinct to protect against it. Well, in the way fascism comes about is that there is a desire to purge that which is harmful or disgusting to society. There's this metaphor of the society as the body, and certain influences or people are seen as diseases or parasites, and we wish to purge the body of this. But when you have fascism, what happens is you purge that which is truly disgusting. Then your disgust threshold is raised through this process because you're constantly focusing on what's disgusting. And then you become disgusted by the next thing and the next and the next. And so these two opposite spiraling processes are how we get these sayings that communism is, when ugly, deformed freaks make it illegal to be normal and kill all the normal people out of envy and spite. And fascism is when boring normie dullards make it illegal to be weird and kill all the creative and interesting people out of knee-jerk reactionary fear.
So, Auron, do you agree with this statement pretty much? Or do you have certain qualms about it?
There's quite a few qualms. Devon is right to acknowledge that there is a general, disgust versus grievance. Sorry, what did he use specifically?
I said envy, but grievance
envy, yeah.
works as well.
Sure, yeah. So he's right to identify that these are forces, social forces inside. You can look at Jonathan Haidt's work and talking about moral tastes and what people focus on in those in the righteous mind to go ahead and lock some of that down if you'd like. I think there's a problem trying to abstract these very real forces into political philosophies or movements. Paul Gottfried has done a lot of work on the definition of fascism. I think he's made a pretty good case that it's a very specific historical reaction. It requires a large amount of context to properly understand. The same, I think, is true of communism. I think that it's not very useful to take either of these words out of their context, out of their actual socio-historical context, and then try to turn them into abstract ways to understand political conflict, because both of these are representations of a particular reaction to massified liberal society. And when we try to just take those singular elements of disgust or grievance out of those and try to turn them into an entire political philosophy, we kind of discard all of the things that define those particular movements. So I'm fine discussing, those aspects of human nature, but I do think, and I make the jokes too, like the Mystery Grove tweet, that you quoted is great, right? That's a classic for a reason.
Yeah.
But I do think that, both left and right, conservatives and liberals both make the mistake of, calling everything they hate fascist or everything they hate communist. I don't think that really helps us move forward to our current situation in which neither of these are actually lived political theories.
Well, I think that tendency arises from sort of an impulse to identify the general underlying psychology behind a movement. So, perhaps if we look at that Mystery Grove tweet, what we're talking about is not communism in the historical sense, which is obviously very different from the sort of gay race communism we have today. The communists of modern America would be put up against the wall and shot by the communists of early 20th century Russia very quickly. But what we're trying to do is identify these kind of underlying impulses and social dynamics which are to some extent hardwired into the human genome, and therefore they present historically again and again and again, and they present differently. We try to identify these impulses which cause certain types of dynamics to manifest again and again and again throughout history, and to sort of understand them through the individual historical circumstances that make them a little bit this way or a little bit that way, depending on when in history they're manifesting and what the economic and technological state is. So it's very easy to get bogged down in this kind of discussion where someone will try to say something that is a little bit general, and then someone else will say, well, that's a generality. And of course, that's true. But everything is a generality. It's how we're able to have discussions in symbolic language at all. So I think generalizations like this need to be understood not as a total description of every nuance of the picture as what's happening today, but as a sort of a useful metaphor for understanding certain important things about what's driving what's going on today.